So, Eddie, would you be able to speak a little bit about just a brief history of the entire street?
Yeah, this street is actually a microcosm of Waterford itself, because I'm sure there are other villages and towns and cities indeed that have a street or streets that Waterford people can identify with. Now, whilst you might think that we should be identified with O'Connell Street, with the Quay and with major thoroughfares like that, this street is where a lot of people in Waterford can identify with, because it was the gateway to the sporting events that happened in the north of the city. And indeed, if you wanted to come down to the south of the city, into the heart of the city, you could only come down two ways, down Patrick Street or down this way here. And there were arteries leading into the centre of the city. The city itself, if one looks at it from a height, from where we are at the moment, you can see that water is actually built into a valley. People don't realise we're in a valley. And these heights that we're on at the moment, and they are heights. If one were to put a plank from here across the valley breaking, there might be a deviation of about a foot in the difference, because of that closely aligned. We're outside the city. We're outside. We're in Trinity without. This is Trinity without for ecclesiastical purposes. Trinity within is down where the cathedral is. So basically, we're in the heart of the country, as was in Old Waterford.
Okay, and so when would this street have been formed then? Would it be back to Viking, medieval?
No, it wouldn't have been back as far as the British are totally responsible for this street, because you see in the street a lot again revert back to the towns and to the villages, and indeed the cities, the other cities that would have, every one of them would have a barrack street, but they'd be called after RIC barracks, Royal Irish Constabulary barracks, the police force of the day. Whereas the major ones like Waterford and Cork, Barrack Street in Cork, there's a Barrack Street in Limerick, Barrack Street, and all those would be called Barrack Street after the military barracks. And indeed the military barracks were, and I use the plural there, barracks, were here in Waterford. There were three of them in this street, up at Mikey Norris's corner up there. You had the cavalry regiment used to bunk down up there. Then Cartridge's Avenue across the road were the artillery regiment. And then down here was the infantry. And indeed, just as an addendum to that, Waterford and Dublin and Cork were the only three cities that had a naval squadron attached to them as well. To get from the city, to get from the docks to here, meant that you had to come through the heart of the old city, which meant you could be open to, as the British would have called it, insurgents or terrorists or whatever they want to call it for the time. So they built this new road leading from roughly where the bridge is, across the top of the city, over to here, Barrack Street, which meant that everything, as you can visualise coming up that street, is called Military Road. Everything to the right was Indian country, it was barren country, it was barren fields. There were no houses, and indeed the main road from Waterford to Cork went up to the top of the Yellow Road into Boherbue country, the land of the Yellow country, the land of the Yellow Furs. That's why it's called Boherbue, after the Yellow Furs. They grew in abundance up there. So they built this lovely road across there, which meant that they could contain anything that happened south of it and north of it. There was nothing to contend with. They then built the barracks as was ever before. I suppose even before the churches were built here, they had barracks there. And reverting back again to the topography of the place, you would have seen that they're on a height. They can see everything. They don't have to worry about people coming at them from behind. There's nothing going to come down from the north, because the north extends into the county. The nearest trouble spot, as they would see it in the county, was probably maybe Kilmacount, certainly Dungarvan, which meant they had plenty of time to respond to anything that was happening. So the city in itself would have been, this would have been the guardian of the city would have been here. And there was another big military barracks over on on Ballybricken Hill as well, which thwarted the efforts of Mr. Cromwell and co. when they came across to try and take the country, take the city, which they never did. So basically, that's the reason that the Barrack Street exists as such. Now, and then when a street like Barrack Street started up, then it was like you could see the Indian reservations. If you ever see old films, the Indian reservations, you'll see piles of Indians outside, and there's trappers selling stuff there and everything, because they all congregated there to this place, and they all would have congregated here. And indeed, back in 1810, I think there was 32 pubs in this street. I mean, just you say there's not 32 houses in it, but there was plenty of houses in it, but there were 32 pubs. Everyone had a pub or a shebeen of some description, where they could cater for the needs of the occupying forces, because these fellas had money to spend, number one, and number two, if they were going into Barrack Street, they weren't going too far away from the home base, and they could drink their brains out over here. And then the little lanes off of them became crucial they were British, they came to the British Army. And there's one instance of a lane that's caused me anguish and heartache for many a year, Five Alley Lane. And how many times I've always only counted four lanes. There's only 4 lanes. So how did they get the name 5? And I for years had tried to get this, and I couldn't come to the bottom of this until I was out with the Little Sisters doing a thing for old people. And the next thing is, this woman knew me, and she said, I saw that thing you did on Water Late the other night, she said. This was a little television program we used to do on WLR. That was very good, she said, but you never gave the reason why Five Alley Lane is called Five Alley Lane. It's like manna from heaven to me, you know. I didn't do it, I said, because I didn't know what it was. She up and she told me, for recreation, for gambling, the British Army troops off duty would come across to the now entrance to Ballybricken Church, which is at the top of, in brackets, Five Alley Lane, and they would play a game of skittles called Fives. So instead of having 8 skittles, they had 5 skittles. So they were going across to play Fives, and just for big money. There might be a week's wages each they might have invested in this game. And there's many a time that the constabulary at the time, the Royal Irish Constabulary, would have broken this up, and they would try to break it up. Because, I mean, the Welsh regiments were here. Always Welsh regiments, or the Gurkhas who came here, you know, for R&R as they call it, rest and recreation during the First World War.
So in a sense they were playing a child's game, is it? Is it kind of a children's kind of game, Skittles, I suppose? But just involved with gambling.
Yeah, it was actually people, where there's nothing to do, people would invent things. Like I can recall hearing a story about 2 Ballybricken fellas who were so into gambling, and this is a true story, they were so into gambling that on a wet day they would sit in the pub and they would bet on little drops of rain running down the windows, 2-inch drop when it got down to the front. They bet money on this. And if you all avidly looking at them, can you imagine the people going outside, people looking out at them like that, saying, what's up? Actually, they're only betting on the drops of water or condensation running down the window. So that Fives would have been a game that they could play, couldn't cause too much trouble with the hierarchy of the army. They could be seen as a juvenile game, which was anything but juvenile. And there's lots of money invested in it.
So there was much gambling around the time there was.
Oh God Almighty, sure. I mean,
was there any particular people that would gamble more than others in certain areas of the city?
No, it's the I hate using this word, but I use it. It was the lower class of the British Army in the sense that anybody below sergeants and upwards seemed to have a life of their own. They created an army. They created the situation for the British Army. And the fellas below that would have been only Joe Sobes. We'd be looking for an extra couple of hours. There wasn't too many things they could do to get a few bob. At the bottom of the street down here, there's a little lane down there called Butcher's Lane. And as we used to say, young fellas, the Jewman had a place down there. And the Jewman, the Wilsons down there, they'd buy anything, bottles, lead. And at that stage, then people were getting rid of the old ranges they had in the house. This is a range, the forerunner of the Agave Hooper, where you could put in coal and you could get massive stuff done on it. But these became unfashionable, so people started putting in new ones. So you brought it down to the Jewman, and he gave you money for it. And what you did, you waited till he went home, and you opened the roof, and went in, and you took your thing back. So we were all the young fellas were mad getting in through the top, whipping and stuff, and eventually they copped on to the fact that these fellas had come back. There must have been 20,000 houses in Waterloo ranges that weren't anything like it, you know. You're just robbing stuff and bringing it back to them to get a couple of bob extra. And another thing where you get a lot of stuff, collect stuff, you get it out on the dump, you see. Waterford City dump, which you can't see anymore because it's turned into a beautiful park out there. But that, you've often seen photographs of Bombay and all these cities in India in particular, where they scour the dumps looking for stuff that they can recycle. That was where we would get our stuff. Again, bicycle wheels. We'd get bicycle wheels were very important because bicycle wheels, you played a game, or we played a game with bicycle wheels. We got a wheel, piece of stick, and you put it along the road in front of you. You called it lacing, N-A-A-S-I-N-G, nacing, racing, a corruptional word, racing. And you naced your bike home, and actually you could run twice as fast if you were nacing it. because you wouldn't be tired. You're concentrating on keeping the wheel at the centre of the road, you know. But the street itself, at the top of the street, you know, Mrs. Tracy had a shop at the top of the street. She sold sweets up there, homemade sweets. Now, a JCB wouldn't break the sweets, they were so hard, you know. So you're guaranteed to get suckability in them was fantastic. You could be sucking it for 2 days and you might only take it down, diminish it slightly, you know.
How much would that cost you?
Halfpenny. And for a halfpenny you get some.
What else could you get for a halfpenny?
You get a halfpenny square. A halfpenny square was, Cleves in Limerick had lovely squares of toffee. And you could go in there and get a halfpenny square. That halfpenny square was a status symbol. Because if you had a halfpenny square in your mouth, you were the king. And you're not going to believe this, but nowadays they talk about hygiene. If something falls on the ground, don't pick that up, there could be germs on it. The big thing you did when you had a halfpenny square, someone said, "Can I have a suck off your square?" And you took it out of your mouth and you handed it to them. And they went, sucked it for as much as they could, you know. Then they handed you back your square. You were happy then, you have to keep them happy and you have to keep yourself happy. But nobody ever thought about the consequences of what might happen. The great Davy Welsh, a soccer player.
Yeah. Could I just stop you there for a second? I just need to stop this and start it again because
Okay.
it only. But okay. Could we go back and talk a little bit more about the Jew man?
Yeah, we had quite a congregation of Jews in Waterford. Jacob Latt, I think, was the man. I'm not 100% certain on this. Was the man who owned the Jew man shop down in Butcher's Lane, and they would buy and sell. They were great people. They would buy and sell anything, and they probably kept the economy going in Waterford because stuff you couldn't get rid of other places, you could get rid of it to them. We would have considered it probably rubbish. The most famous family in Waterford of the Jews were the Wolfsons. Now the Wolfsons were Catholics and Irish in every sense of the word except that they were Jews. I know that sounds like a contradiction. But they were stone cracked about soccer, every one of them. And one of them, Duffy Wolfson, formed a little soccer team, Evergreen. And they became one of the greatest soccer teams, certainly underage soccer teams we ever had in the city. And Simon, his brother, was avidly involved in it. And these people were running this for the benefit of the community, I suppose. They were going to get nothing out of it. Like, you know, it was amateur soccer at its very, very best.
What did his place look like?
I beg your pardon?
What did his place look like?
They lived down on the down in the manor. They had their own synagogue. The synagogue was in the house. And it was very funny, this story is told about Duffy used to be playing cards down in the CYMS, the Catholic Young Men's Society, poker, and the next thing is he'd be losing. And his brother would come in and say, "Come on, we have to go back for prayers." He said, "I can't go back for prayers until I'm after winning my money back. You have to come back for prayers. I'm going to tell Mum and Dad if you don't come back. I don't care what you're going to tell. I'll tell you another one Tuesday. If you stay there and insist on going back," he said, "I'm going over and I'm going to get a crew bean and eat it." Which was totally against the faith, you know. And that was enough to warn off the brother. But they were lovely people, the Wolfsons. You know, everyone idolised them. They were part of us. You know, if only for you knew they were Jews, you'd say they were Irish. And even the sort of the merchant princes of Waterford.
So Jacob now, I've heard descriptions of what he looks like, and they're all a bit different.
Yeah.
But I heard that he was kind of a tall man with long black
That's right,
clothes
yeah.
with the sleeveless gloves.
Oh no, he had a beautiful daughter. Half the town were cracked about it. She was older than my generation, but half the town were cracked about her. And they had no hope of ever getting off with her or marrying her, because that's what they were very strict about that, the Jews. They had to marry into their own faith, you know. Yeah, there was another man lived down opposite the Central Technical Institute. And when you think of the things you used to do as youngsters, you'd wait till this man came out and you'd be all showing Heil Hitler. Straight one man cracked. Because they were after escaping from the programs that were going on over in Europe. There was about 5 families in total in Waterford. And I think myself as a measure of the city as to how many Jewish families lived in the city, because they were great for commerce. And they attracted commerce. Other Jews, you know what they are for business. The Jews are, they dominate business all over the United States and Britain. And that's through sheer hard work and taking a chance. A lot of people don't give them credit for that. sheer hard work and taking a chance, and they survive. And they've unfortunately, our people pulled out, as they did in Limerick. They were run out of Limerick by the Catholic sodality in one church, vilified from the altar, so they had to run for their lives literally. But there was a famous Jew in Cork, Jewish family in Cork, called the Goldbergs. And Mr. Goldberg now was the solicitor. They reckon to be one of the best solicitors in the country. And he didn't care what caste or what nationality you were. If you went to him with a problem, he'd take it on board. You know. And more likely than not, he'd solve it for you.
There were other characters around Barrack Street as well.
Well, there were, yeah. Well, up off the one of the lanes now, when I said Five Alley Lane, there was an enigmatic, indeed an eccentric man that lived up there called Martin Hunt. Now, Martin Hunt was in the, he was a single man. People would say unkind things about his mental health, but actually he was a good guy, and he was in the construction corps in the Irish Army during the Second World War. So that was his he had been out when it was wanted, you know, and he was mad about hurling. He never went any place without a hurley. And he could be walking down the quay and you see him down the clock tower, and he baiting balls up there. And the tourists were taking photographs of Martin, you know, and he'd be baiting the ball. And the next thing is, he was great on the spoons. And he played the spoons away in a musical situation. And when he got a drink or two aboard, he said his name wasn't Martin Hunt at all. He says, "I am Martin Hans." He straight away switched into German, you see. And the things the boys all knew it in the folk, like, you know. And he said one night, I remember him saying it, I was in the folk, he said, "I want to sing a song in German for you." He said, "You will not understand the words," he said, "but I will sing it for you." He says, "You feel you've been China and you've been China." This man was born in Watertown. The song he sang was, "I want to go a wandering." This was German. But he was a great guy. He loved the Iron Zone Hurling Club, and the Iron Zone Hurling Club, without a doubt, loved him. They brought him every place with them. He'd go down training with them. He was on the line egging them on, and you know, and geez, he was a bundle of energy. A very fit man for his age. Kept himself very, very fit altogether. He was one guy that lived over there, Smashville. Now, one of the other streets we'd have passed on the way down here now was, we passed down Dial Street. There was a man who shall remain nameless, who was living in Dial Street, and he used to collect timber down on the docks. He'd break it up for little bundles of sticks and sell them for a penny a bundle. It's a nice little bit of income for him. But his nerves used to be out the whole time. And then this night, all the fellas, the people just stand at corners, you see, and all the fellas were standing at the corner up there. And this fella came up, and there was a lot of lead out being taken down on the docks where the timber was. And there was a famous guard in water, a title called Guard Minotaur. Now, if Minotaur was after you, it was worse than the FBI or BOSS or MI5 being after you, because this man was going to get you in serious trouble. So they started slagging him. Want to be careful now, Minotaur's out looking for you. And then when he got excited, he had a slight stammer, you know. "I don't think they don't care," he said like that. "Oh, well, he's looking for you." "Well, I couldn't care less. I have a perfect lullaby." And he was a great character. Then further up there, we had one of the great characters come. It was a character in sport, a great legend of sport, Paddy Code, lived in Dial Street. Willie was his brother. He had another brother, but Willie and Paddy played in Ireland. Willie played for Waterford. Paddy went on to form the nucleus of one of the greatest clubs ever in Ireland, Shamrock Rovers. And his young fellas, he picked all these young kids to play for him. They were known as kind of the Irish Buzzley Babes. All of them attained full international status. Davy Welsh was another great soccer player. He lived on the terrace above. Davy Welsh was the only Catholic to ever play for Linfield Football Club in the north of Ireland. And there was no soccer in Waterford at the time, so that he would have gone across to play for anybody, and he played for Limerick. And Shelbourne and Dublin came after Limerick to know what he sold him. They sold him for, I think, £9 million or something like that. And he only played for about 4 games when the next thing is Linfield Football Club took him on board, and he played for Linfield. And after 6 months with Linfield, he was.
1 second there.
Yeah,
They're going to stop that there.
As I was saying to you about the Davy Welsh, eventually when he got to Linfield Football Club in the north of Ireland, one of the big Birmingham clubs came after him, West Bromwich Albion, and they signed him up for something like 7 or 8,000 pounds, which was colossal money. He had bought 7 or 8 houses down in Barrack, maybe 12 houses in Barrack Street. That kind of money. And when incidentally, his goal scoring records in Milton Football Club still stand to this day. And Aston Villa, who would be the big money club in Birmingham, came after him then to sign him from West Brom. They did a deal with the chairman of West Brom that he should play for them. And Davy said, I'm not going unless you get a signing on fee. Now this was ever before the Bosman thing came in or anything like that. They looked at him, they got fused with the colour. You know, what are you talking about? We don't pay players signing on fees. You're going and that's it. We got a nod, said Davy. Well, we put you out of football here, man. Said, well, you can do what you like. Said, I can go back to my brother Joe. Joe's his brother back in Waterford. Joe's in the mental hospital. He says he's a carpenter up there. He says, I can do the carpentry myself. He says, so I'm off in the morning. So they realised that he had him over a barrel. So they said, how much do you want? This was like a Hiroshima. He said, I want £1,000 quid. You know, £1,000. Honest to God, lads, £1,000 would have bought you the freedom of the city. They gave him the £1,000, and he scored goals for fun with Aston Villa. Really, his best friend died only a couple of weeks back, Con Martin, and he told me a great story about Con Martin. Con and himself were the best friends, because you see, they would have played for the north of Ireland and the south of Ireland. They used to play the soccer matches then. They played them. Paddy Cole did as well. That if you're good enough, you're picked for the both, because the North play their matches on Saturday. Their religion forbade them from playing matches on Sunday. So down this end of the street, there was some great characters down here, and indeed there was a shop that backed its way in through the garden at the top of Barrack Street called Bridgie Welch's. Now Bridgie Welch used to sell a cigarette and a match for a penny to all the fellas going to the secondary school inside Mount Sion. And of course the big thing was to be able to smoke then. If you could smoke, you were really, you were after making it, you know. So they'd get the cigarette and they'd get the match and they'd light it up. Where would you say they'd all sit? They used to sit on 50 gallons of paraffin oil. There was a big paraffin oil tank in there, smoking their brains out, little realising they could have obliterated Barrack Street. Now, I say Bridgie Welch's if they had done it. Bridgie, she had a lovely shop with her sister up there. Down below here, then you had all great kinds. You had Blush Tracy. The Barrack Street Band first of all were formed down here. The Barrack Street Band were, I remember the Barrack Street Band were under Mr. Flannery. And they lived literally opposite here again. They had a band room, and they had always attracted youngsters into the band. They were known as the Barrack Street Band then, and they progressed through that, then become the Barrack Street Brass and Reed Band, then the Barrack Street Concert Band. And there was, down below them, it's Thompson's was obviously one of the great places.
How would the Barrack Street Band have started off? What kind of instruments would they have had?
They had brass instruments at the beginning.
Just brass? Any
then
particular brass?
They went to Brass and Reed.
Brass and Reed.
Because Brass and Reed made them quite... Actually, you know, the Barrack Street Brass and Reed Band, the reeds mean the clarinets and the saxophones and, you know, the oboes. But they were always family orientated, and they're still there. They're formed 300 years ago, but they're still there. And if you look back through the roots of the fellas, you'll probably find someone belonged to them back 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Was also a member of the band, you know.
Another thing you were saying about was soccer. I'm just going to go back a little bit. The soccer and hurling. If you played soccer, could you play hurling?
Well, in those days you didn't, because you incurred the wrath of certainly of the GAA, because if you played soccer, you were persona non grata. They didn't want to know about you. And Davy Welch, the man I mentioned earlier, he was a marvellous hurler. I remember Paul Gofanin there, hooked around coming to Luke's last Grail, telling me that at one stage he could have made any Waterford team. He was so good, but he wanted to play soccer. It was his sport, you know. And they never taught any of the lesson. The fact was the rules were there and they had to be adhered to. Davy couldn't play soccer and play hurling. And I'm sure it rankled with him. It certainly rankled with an awful lot of people who wouldn't have been involved in this. It's like the fellas who would be criticising, say, someplace in Waterford, just take off the top of my head. You'll often hear people criticising the Water Regional Hospital who've never been in the hospital in their lives before. But if you get to if you go further into it and say, well, what did you hear? Well, a fella's aunt whose best friend's mother was in there. That's the kind of the fifth-hand thing you get, which, you know, that doesn't work. These people were all, anybody that was involved in soccer were deeply immersed in it, as they were in hurling. And at the top of Bunkers Hill, as we called it, every Sunday the Waterford were playing a home game. There could be anything up to 600 people standing up there, waiting for the Barrack Street Band to march up. Then they'd march out behind them, out to the soccer field in Kilcoan, and they'd march home behind them, because it wasn't a journey then anymore. So they're trying for talking and getting a bit of physical exercise in, and you didn't realise the distance you were walking. Of course, we never took cognizance of the effect this was happening on the poor fellas in the band who were having to play all this music the whole time, you know. Blosh Tracy was down there. Blosh was, he ran a lovely shop down there. There was another, May Glody. May Glody had a shop down there. There was a man there, like Christy Cooney. Christy Cooney had a huge pair of arched legs. People used to say he could put a barrel between his legs. He was so bandy, you know. And opposite him then was one of the most famous characters of any street, never mind say Barrack Street. He was a Protestant bishop called Daddy Curtis. And he and his daughter used to work down there with nothing, only natural herbs. And they made all their own medicines. He'd go out often, you see him going out with either a dog or a goat pulling a lovely little truck behind it, and they walking out to collect herbs and collect flowers, and they making up. And actually he was known in Waterford to a lot of people who come from outside of Barrack wouldn't have known, but he was known as the wart man, because if you had warts, you went to him. And the daughter would always say, "There's somebody else for warts down here, Dad," and he'd come down straight away, and he'd tend to your warts. He had a great thing about the natural remedies ever before it became popular. And I remember we were out picking, I don't know, was it something for watercress one day out the country, and we met him. And the one thing you wouldn't do, for whatever you were picking, you wouldn't eat it, because it was pointless picking it and eating it. You had nothing coming home. You brought it home to your mother. And we had amassed quite an amount of watercress. And he knew our predicament. And he said to us, "Now I'll show you what to eat. It'll be a lovely filling eat," he said. And we went across to the bank of the road. And here are all these primroses growing there. Now he said, "Snap off the primroses, throw away the stalks, and eat the rest." And he said, "You'll have a lovely fulfilling meal." And to this day, if I'm out the country, I'll always pick a couple of primroses and eat them. And they were lovely. They were a little bit dry in your mouth, but once you used to let it went around it, it was great. And this man taught us all those things about the benefits of when he came over with the idea that we could do with nettle. When you think of it, you know, we would do a nettle soup. I mean, they all thought he was mad. He was going up to the mental hospital, which was never referred to as the mental hospital. It was always referred. You look up, you see the red brick. That's all. It was never known. He finished up in the red brick. That was he was in the mental hospital. But we thought that he would have finished up in the red brick over telling us to eat nettles. No, you go to any fashionable restaurant, nettle soup was the mainstay of the diet.
I heard he had a really good heart as well. Like
he was a real Christian man, Christian man.
Because when he was growing, when I was talking to a couple of people that were living up along, and they said when they were growing up that he used to be like Santa as well at the same time. He used to come over with bags of oranges and stuff like that. Said, "Oh, Santa's after dropping these down the wrong chimney."
Oh yeah, he was a lovely man. He was I can't recall what religion he was in. I think he may have been a Methodist. He was a bishop now. He was well up in the ranks. But it didn't matter a damn to the people at Barrack Street. They just saw him as being one of their own. And indeed, anybody in Waterford that knew him would see him as being one of their own. He was to outsiders not from the street, he would have been a sort of an eccentric man who was doing something that's, you know, like not too fashionable, but deep down he was a religious man that put God first and foremost. And then on foot of that, then he went off and amassed these cures. And by God, I remember telling a man went in with cancer at the throat to him. This lad's grandson told me this. You know, I mean, even today they would have great difficulty in curing cancer of the throat with chemotherapy and all the various things it would do for you. And he told them that he'd bring him out and he'd collect blackthorn bushes. And they collected blackthorn bushes. And he took the flowers off the blackthorn bush and he boiled them. Then he strained them. And he said, "Now that will get rid of your cancer." And your man swore that it may not have got rid of the cancer, but it added life to him. He got another couple of years out of it that he mightn't have got, and he had great faith in Daddy Curtis then. The official doctors wouldn't have been on, because the newest thing is alternative medicine then, you know.
What did they think of him?
I think they saw that there was merit in what he was doing, but that it was a lot of jiggery-pokery, you know. This was just something somebody made up, and that they were going to well, so what, like, you know, this guy can do it. They can do it all over the country. Actually, Sean Boylan now, do you know Sean Boylan, the great Meath manager, great Meath football manager? He was manager up to a couple of years back. Sean Boylan specialised in herbal remedies. and people went from all over the country to him. And, he went. He could, if you had something that was suspicious, and Danny Curtis could fix it, he'd fix it. If not, he'd say you should go to the doctor about that. But what he would do is he had his own homemade poultices. Now, I don't know what the combination of things that we were in were, but by God did they work. Now, he put that on the spot, and I never had it done, but people were telling me they'd be crying with the agony for a couple of days after. But given a week, suddenly this thing would work, and they'd leave a mark forever in a day, because he took the whole growth. And one man told me that his father, he put it on his leg. When it was finished, Daddy Curtis took off the plaster off him, then pulled out what he could only describe as an octopus. Huge tentacles going the whole way down to his foot and going all over his body. This was the cancer. It was probably a benign cancer, but he was able to do those things, and people trusted him, which was the most important thing. They trusted him, you know.
Okay, I'm just going to stop that there. And
can I come back to something we said there?
You can, of course.
Because I haven't hit on it yet. We had a plane crash in Barrack Street. And the plane crash in Barrack Street, it consisted of a light aircraft that the British Army, the Royal Army Air Corps, I think it was called, used to use between military barracks. As you see, any troops that came to Waterford never came by road, they came by sea. They either came from Dublin by sea or by Cork by sea, which meant that straight away there was no one going to be killed, there was no one going to be ambushed or anything like that, so you could move them around like that. And but the way they got the letters and the information to and small items to Waterford would be, a plane would take off from the Curragh and swoop over the camps that were down there. Kilkenny would have been one, Clonmel down to Waterford, and then bang over the top. Now, what they did is they'd come in, down, they'd skied, literally slide down over the top of the golf course, across the river, pull her up, get up to a bit of height, then dive down over the military barracks, and the co-pilot, or whoever it be, would throw out a package of reinforced stuff with all the letters and whatever he had into the barracks. So as he did, the pilot then went, pulled her back, and suddenly the plane went from went a juk, and he barely got over the gate, and he got up over the gate and then slammed into the top of Batterberry's pub. I think they have a photograph of that. Slammed into the top of Batterberry's pub, and there's a very funny story told about it. The 4 men in it, one of them I think died afterwards, but they were actually, you can imagine the two of them sitting at the top of a pub in an aeroplane, and the whole of Waterford looking up at them.
Would you be able to say that to me again?
Sorry?
There, what was that? I couldn't hear you.
The plane crash.
Yeah, the plane crashed, but there was two fellas?
There was two fellas, the pilot and the co-pilot, or the pilot and the fella throwing out the envelopes. And the next thing is, being Ireland at the time, the first thing they did is they didn't send for an ambulance, they sent for the priest. So the priest came from just at the back of us here, up there. They get the ladders, he goes up and he clambers up, and he looks in at the two fellas. One fella is badly damaged and the other fella is nearly out of it, and he says to the fella that's nearly out of it, "In nomine Domini, et Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus." And your man said to him, "Father," he said, "you're wasting your time," he said, "I'm Church of Ireland." And the priest said to him, "Well, in that event," he said, "you better make your own way home." And went back down the ladder. I left the poor fella there. I often wondered, like, what a thing for a fella to say to you, you know. But it was of the time, you know, they didn't recognise the schism between the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches, and it was just terrible even as a youngster, because this could work. If you went to a Protestant funeral, you were going to be excommunicated or something like that, or it could be a reserved sin put in front of the bishop, you know. But that particular day, now that happened during, as we call them, during the Troubles, because we tended to put everything that we did during the Troubles, and the other one was in the emergency. The emergency consisted, I think it's something like 50 million people lost their lives between 1938 and 1945. Countries vanished off the face of the earth. Empires were dissolved. But in Ireland it was only an emergency. They didn't see it as a Second World War at all, you know. And they had, that's why the military barracks were so important to the British in that instance. Now later on, the military barracks served another great purpose, because there was a man over there called Father Farrell. He came from behind me there. Father Farrell was a priest, a great driving force, and a man who followed it on for a Father Power, who started the idea of a carnival. And if they had the carnival going and got enough amusements and things into it, they could get the money to build the church of Luke Wadding Street, which is still known affectionately to water people as the New Church, despite the fact there's been 4 different churches built after it. It was known as the New Church. So they held the carnivals down in the courtyard, or the courthouse. And the problem with the courthouse was this: anybody could get into the courthouse for nothing. But you couldn't get into the military barracks. There was only one entrance in and one entrance out. So the women outside would be all, and there would be 4, maybe 8 people, 4 on either side, selling apples. There were great families for apples in Waterford. There was the Grants, the Mulallys, the Powers, the Hurleys, and all these people would be there, and they'd be selling apples, and that was their stock and trade. And they'd have lovely white tablecloths on the tables with the apples in pyramids. And as you went in, you might get, if you got threepence worth of apples, that's 3 cents worth of apples, you could fill your jersey with them. You could be eating apples all night. That's how plentiful they were. Once you went inside the door, then it was like walking into Aladdin's cave. Because the first thing hit you when you walked in the hallway between the entrance to the actual barracks itself, they'd have what they called the gate prize. The gate prize was normally a chiffonier or a 3-piece suite. Now a 3-piece suite, my God almighty, I mean, it was for a shilling, getting a ticket, you could get a 3-piece suite for a shilling. If you went in to buy it, it might cost you 15 quid. You know, that puts it in perspective for you. And when you went inside then, on either side of the military barracks then, running up either side of them, were all these stalls run by committee members in the parish who would make homemade brillantine for putting in your hair, going to dances. The problem with the homemade brillantine was this: it was gorgeous when you put it in, but the minute a sort of heat came on, to start running down your face and dribbles, you know, it felt like going around with big stained faces with all this brillantine running down their faces. And they'd be selling homemade bread and you know, they'd have country butter and country eggs and all that sort of thing. And then the amusement, Turks used to do the amusements. You'd have the Wall of Death, to young kids, boys particularly. The Wall of Death was something else, because what it meant was people going around on motorbikes in around a huge big circle. You know, centrifugal force kept them up. We didn't think that. We thought it was pure skill. And everybody wanted to be one of them when we came out of the barracks, you know. Then they'd have the rag, which they call the rag. It was held on the final day. And the rag would attract people from all over the city. And the rag was that you dressed up in something of the time. At the time there was one of the kings of King Fahd, F-A-U-D, Fahd of Saudi Arabia, was fairly upmarket, notoriously upmarket. And somebody would dress up as him, somebody else would dress up as the members of the Waterford hurling team who won in '59. And then they give out money. Now the top prize was a pound, one pound. And you could get 5 shillings. Now 5 shillings was less than 25 pence, but Jesus, 5 shillings. First thing you did with your 5 shillings, you ran home to your mother and you gave her the money and took back whatever you got. My brother Bernie, God love him, Bernie, God rest him as well. Bernie came up with a wonderful idea altogether. To my mother's amazement and anger, he got a thing of black boot polish, and he covered himself in black boot polish. It took him months to get it off, and she had to get Pond's cream to get it off, and he was covered in black. And he went down, "Who are you?" "I'm going to be Al Johnson," he said. So he walked down, and there's a lovely warm day, and the black polish was running off his face. And he stood in front of my family, and he said, "Mammy, I'll give you Mammy." He said, "There's your £5, go home to your mother." Very won a prize, and we were able to go into every kind of thing to try and get our names on the prize. We couldn't know. It was a lovely street. It was a street full of character and characters. Great Christian people lived in that street, and indeed, reverting back to the Jews and the people who had a place down there, they in their own way contributed greatly to the street, because they were able to give the, as I said, if you had something you couldn't flog, they'd buy it. And they'd buy it for something, which is an important thing. It's a matter of, they bought it for something. 6 pence, 6 cents, I don't know what you call it nowadays, you know, 5 cents or something. 6 cents in those days, 5 cents in those days, sounds like nothing now. Could be the difference between a family eating something special for their meal or not eating for their meal. Things were very poor in Waterford, you know. And they used to come up with tremendous combinations. The women were marvellous. Christ, the women were something else. They would keep families fed on nothing. And every garden at the back then would have their own vegetable patch. They would grow lettuce and rhubarb in particular. Rhubarb was a great one for making tarts with. And tarts were very filling. And all they wanted was get enough sugar to vary on top of it. And they'd make rhubarb jam, rhubarb this and rhubarb that. And you'd be sent out the country to buy or to pick wild apples out there, you know, crab apples they used to call them. Bring them home. Your mother could do amazing things. She'd make apple tarts. There'd be no longer a sour taste after them. Whatever to do with them. Just make blind stew, a stew with no meat. And as I said to you, the people were outstanding people. Like I couldn't pay tribute to them highly enough.